Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Japan once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves. Now, if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but in recent times they've been getting a lot of plaudits for their kind of fruity, juicy, smoothie, sour type beers as well. And I have had a couple of other styles from this brewery over the years, which have always been pretty good. So potentially it is fair to say that this brewery is very well rounded. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I've had from this brewery several times before. It's one that I know they can do very well, and it is one of their latest releases as of the time of filming, which is October 2025. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head over to Japan. We are going to go to Yamanashi Prefecture, which is out to the west of Tokyo, and to be specific, we're going to go to a little place called Hokuto, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Uchu Brewing. So this particular beer is simply called Break, but we could also say it's called Break 1. I think they're going to do a few different versions of this beer from what I read. This one comes in at 10% ABV. It's a New England hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, it's my first IPA from these guys in quite a wee while. If memory serves me correctly, my last review appeared on the channel from them back in about January, and that was like a big doppelbock actually, which I really quite enjoyed. So yeah, definitely cool to return to an IPA from these guys, and I've heard very good things about this one. So let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Break Edition 1 from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture, out to the west of Tokyo, over in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Uchu Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. I do have one of their sour beers to look at in a future video, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly, of course, because I did bring back quite a lot of Japanese beers with me from Japan this time, and we get quite a regular supply of them over here too. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Uchu Brewing once again then. So, Uchu Brewing, as I've mentioned already, were founded back in 2017 by Masahiro Kusunose and Rumiko Suzuki. So these guys were both from a background in agriculture, and they first encountered craft beer on the US West Coast, and they found that they loved the different personalities that each brewery had, and they wanted to bring back some of this West Coast American craft beer culture to them. To Japan with them. But Masahiro is the main brewer, and Rumiko was mainly doing the kind of marketing and business side of things in the early days, but she does take part in the brewing and the farming side of the company as well. So they actually started their farming activities back in 2009 under the name Space Farmers, if we translate it into English, but they were growing rice and vegetables without pesticides and offering like agriculture workshops and things like that. In 2016 they planted hops, and they have their own hop fields as well right next to their brewery, and they would often hand pick some of the hops that were going into some of their beers, and today they're running miso and rice paddy workshops in addition to their brewing activities. But they raised over 3 million yen through crowdfunding, and they used this to build their own brewery in Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, and much of the construction of this original facility was DIY. They sold their first beers in 2018, and then they expanded the brewery in 2021 with a second round of crowdfunding, which this time raised over 17 million yen. The next year in 2022, they raised a further 12 million yen, and they used this to open their first tap room, which is called Roadside Station Kobuchisawa, and you'll find it about 15 kilometers away from the brewery. But over the next few years, they apparently plan to open up a new brewery, and they're currently working to produce some barrel-aged beers as well. I don't think I've seen any of those yet, if I'm not mistaken. But in late 2024, they also opened a pop-up bar in the Asahiya Mall in Roppongi in Tokyo, and they are working on some other pop-ups and things like that as well, from what I understand. Hopefully, we get an Uchu Brewing tap room in Tokyo or further afield at some point, but this is one of the breweries that I definitely want to go and visit. But the name Uchu Brewing translates into English as space brewing, or I've seen some translations say universe brewing as well, so most of their beers are named after different space themes and space phenomena. So yeah, pretty cool actually. That was one of the things that attracted me to their beers early on when I first discovered them. But as of October 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 358 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. Like I mentioned to you earlier on, this brewery really made its name with the New England Hazy IPAs, but they have been doing a number of other IPAs over the years too, and I've had a few different styles like Imperial Stouts and Doppelbocks and stuff too. But recently, their fruity sours have been getting a lot of praise, and we reviewed Geisha, if I'm not mistaken, on the channel a couple of months back, and that was pretty damn good, I have to say. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Uchu Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep you up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So as I say, from what I understand, this beer is going to be brewed with a few different versions going forward. There have been several beers produced by Uchu Brewing that have the name Break in them. I reviewed one called Fancy Break about a year or so ago, if I remember correctly. And yeah, basically I'm not sure exactly what the theme continuing on is going to be, but this one comes in at 10% ABV, a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is quadruple dry hopped, and it's got Citra, Nelson Sauvin and Racal in it. So yeah, we know those hops quite well. Citra is the only American one of those three. It's going to give you 14% alpha acid, a lovely big juicy mango character with a wee bit of lemon lime in a New England Hazy IPA, whereas Nelson Sauvin is New Zealand, 16% alpha acid. It's going to give that lovely big white green grapey gooseberry note, and Racal, from what I remember, is only about 6% alpha acid or so, and it's going to give you quite a lot of like apricot and kind of peary type characters, actually quite a tropical fruit leaning hop, that one. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the beer itself. I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. Not sure how well you're going to see it there. We're going to have to tilt it in the light to let you see what's going on, but there you can see at the top the Uchu hop flower there with the Roman numeral 1. So as I say, some people have been listing this beer as Break batch 1 or edition 1, I'm not sure. We need to check and ask them what we should call this beer. But there you can see plain silver top on the can. This one is 355 milliliters, which is quite a common measurement in Japan, and it tells you a wee bit in Japanese on the side here, and it's just talking about kind of how they developed this recipe and sort of what flavours and things are in this one. But of course that's what we're going to find out in the video. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. Break edition 1, a fancy triple IPA apparently from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture over in Japan. Let's do this. So let's get this guy out and into the glass. Oh, look at that. Now that has to be one of the soupier and gloopier New Englands I've seen in recent times. Looks lovely, and we don't want to waste any of it. Let's make sure we get all of that out. Yeah, there we are. So that's that. Let me just line up the can again so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, anyway, before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head actually. If we bring that up to the camera, you can see there's some medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid, and it gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go. But you can see that the head is fading away to be a sort of thinner, more foamy layer, but that thicker ring around the edge of the glass is kind of going to sit there. But in terms of the colour of this one, I would describe this as being a little bit of a mixed tropical fruit juice, maybe like mango and pineapple or something like that. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that really is just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, this one is a little bit paler than some of the other ones that I've seen. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that when you're talking about beers in the IPA style umbrella. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. I can see a few bubbles just kind of coming up to the surface there. But yeah, I don't know if there's really very much carbonation visible with this one. The level of haze in this beer though is pretty damn impressive. It's one of the soupier and gloopier ones that I've come across, but you'd expect a little bit of that, to be honest, when you're up in the kind of 10% range in the New England hazy category. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. This can vary from brewery to brewery, beer to beer, and so on. But yeah, this one, as I say, one of the soupier and gloopier ones that I've come across recently. But all in all, nothing particularly surprising about the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is. I think we can go on and have a little look at the aroma of this one. We've said everything we need to about the appearance, so aroma section time. Let's do it. I think this is going to be pretty awesome. Alright, okay. I'm going to say straight away, this one doesn't have the most pungent of aromas actually. It comes across as being very smooth and just very juicy, if that makes sense. But it does smell lovely. I have to say that about it. It really does smell just lovely, soft, and very, very juicy. When you sugar it up, you do get a little bit more stuff coming out of it. And I think it goes together, I think it does go together really, really nicely. Yeah, right. Okay, so this beer gives you everything you would want from the New England style. You've got that lovely juicy fruitiness, the big sort of creamy backbone, and that kind of bright green component to it. So yeah, for me, where would we go with this? For me, I would say that you know, when we talk about New England IPAs, there's sort of 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers. You've got the sort of rye leaning, grainy rye leaning side of things. You've also got the farmhousey yeasty type character, which these 2 elements are a little bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs. But then you've also got the wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, the oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of things. And as the style has moved away from New England to other places and evolved, these are the 4 things that we should kind of focus on, if you like. So yeah, for me, the first impression that I have of this one is that it's quite an oaty leaning New England IPA, but you can detect a little bit of the wheaty bitiness in there, and of course the big barley malt bready character is quite obvious too. But yeah, for me, quite an oaty leaning New England IPA, this one, but I think we're going to get a fair bit of wheat in the flavour. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, if we examine the aroma, you've got some lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. There's a little bit of a woody character, of course, as well. Wee touch of Jacob's cream cracker. I do get a little bit of, yeah, there's some Jacob's cream cracker in there. I do get some wholemeal brown bready sort of notes coming out of the beer too, which is quite interesting. The more I smell of it, the more obvious they become. Then on top of that, you've got a lovely fresh white bready character in there. So yeah, lovely fluffy fresh white bread in there. And yeah, you've got a little bit of a more wheaty, yeah, you can get a bit more of a dense wheaty white bready character coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, and then you've got that yeah, you've got more of a kind of smooth white bready character, dense wheaty white bready character further forward. So a little bit of bitiness in there, but mostly a kind of smoother character from the wheat. And remember, wheat can vary a little bit depending on where it's from. European wheat has quite a little bit of bitiness to it, whereas North American and sort of Australian and New Zealand wheat are a little bit smoother. I'm not sure how much wheat is actually produced domestically in Japan, but I don't think too much, in all honesty. But yeah, got that lovely, more dense, wheaty white bready character out of this one, and of course then you've got all the oaty notes coming out of the beer. So for me, you can tell this one's pretty fresh because the oats are very, very creamy in this one. And remember, when it comes to your New England IPAs, the oats can be a fairly rough but good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier they smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. So yeah, you can smell in this one, it's got a lovely big oaty creaminess coming out of it, which I have to say I do really quite enjoy. So yeah, lovely big oaty creaminess in this one. A nice little bit of, yeah, the oaty creaminess that comes out of this one is lovely. You can smell it's quite creamy in the middle, but you've got a bit more dryness out of it too. I think this beer must be about 6 weeks, 2 months old, something like that. So for me, New England IPAs are often in their prime in that sort of timeline. But yeah, on top of that, you do get a little bit of there's a little touch of a Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch and a wee bit of a biscuity note in it as well. But yeah, it's not overly sweet in this beer. I wouldn't say it's mostly oaty and creamy, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, let's have a little look at the yeasty side of things then. So for me, at the back of the nose, the yeasty type character, the yeasty character in this one, it's got a lovely kind of sweet, buttery white bready character to it. There's a fluffier white bready note in there. So yeah, sweet, more buttery white bread in this one. A little bit of a softer, fluffier white bread as well. And I'm getting wee elements of like cracker and bread crust out of this beer too, at the back of the nose. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think is really nice. I do quite enjoy that. Yeah, so for me, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of this one. The more that I smell of it, as I say, the more wheaty character I get out of it. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So, as I've often said in these IPA reviews, there are 3 types of hopping that you can use when you're brewing these beers. Pardon me. So the 3 types of hoppings would be early addition hopping, which takes place within your first hour or so of the wort boil. That gives you a deeper, danker green component and a more, it's responsible for the vast majority of your bitterness. Late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour or so of your wort boil, gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component. Then dry hopping takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma, and again it gives you a very bright green component. So West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3, which is why they've got that deeper, danker and more sort of oily character to them, whereas New England IPAs tend to rely mainly on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they have that kind of softer, more juicy quality. And you can very much tell with the brightness of the green component here, it's primarily late addition and dry hop. And we know that this one is, of course, quadruple dry hopped as well, so it makes sense. But yeah, let's focus on that hoppy part of the beer. We'll start with the green component first. So for me, the green side of the hops in here, there's a little bit of like woodiness coming out of this one. I do get a tiny bit of earthiness too, but for me, mostly it's actually quite woody. But yeah, lovely floral aromaticity, a nice zesty kind of grassy character coming out of it, and yeah, you do get that nice kind of oily character to the green component there as well, which tells me there's probably some cryo being involved in here. But yeah, a lovely smooth green component in this one. Let's focus on the fruity side of things just to round off our aroma section of the video. So yeah, for me, this one, the green component, the fruity component of this beer is kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. But I'm finding with this one that the Nelson Sauvin is kind of dominating. There's a lot of kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry notes out of this one. That big oily character is really kind of sitting there underneath that. But in the top of the nose, I'm getting a sharper peachy note out of this one. There's big juicy mangoes, softer passion fruit, apricots, pineapple, and stuff like this. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together in this one, I think, is really quite nice. I love the fruitiness that comes out of this. I think some of the peachiness and some of the kind of pineapple-y notes might be coming from the Rakal in this one, but the softer apricot and stuff underneath I think is likely to be that as well. So Rakal and Citra always work together quite interestingly to really push the tropical notes out. But I still find the Nelson Sauvignon in this one, that white green grapey gooseberry, is actually quite prominent. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really quite nice. Yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the aroma of this one. I'm finding the wheat comes out more with this one and the tropical notes come out a little bit more. The sharp side of the tropical notes come out a wee bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go. So, or not the further into the aftertaste you go, the more that you smell of the thing. Brain is really not working today, guys. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma section. So as I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beers before you get stuck into them. But let's have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is Break Edition 1 from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture, to the west of Tokyo over in Japan. One of my favourite Japanese breweries. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, kanpai. Damn, right. I'm going to say straight away, this is one of the best New Englands, this is one of the best hazies I've reviewed in quite a wee while. Right, these guys at Uchu, they really know what they're doing. You know, when it comes to this hazy IPA category, they've always really been very on point. So if you haven't tried some of this brewery's beers, you really need to. These guys seriously know what they're doing, and look what it was, just the impact of the flavour you get in this one, it's lovely. I'm not surprised having had beers from this brewery before, but this one, it's just a little bit striking. So if you get the chance to try this, have a go at it and see what you think for yourselves. But I'm going to say straight away, this one is an awesome beer. Massive thumbs up to Uchu Brewing. Glad I managed to get this one back with me. I was a bit worried when I was in Osaka that I wasn't going to find an Uchu beer to bring back, but I got lucky and found this one in Ie, which was great. So yeah, first impression of this one, yeah, it is more of an oaty, creamy leaning New England IPA, which was what the aroma was making me think it would be, but it's got a lovely oiliness and slickness to it as well, and the green component is just lovely and smooth. I really like that about this one. There's a good little bit of yeasty character comes out of this beer as well, but yeah, mostly oaty and creamy. I'm surprised there's not a little bit more wheatiness coming out of it, because I really thought the wheat was going to show its head a little bit more, just based on what I was getting from the aroma. So yeah, I like that with this one. It gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, let's do as we always do then. We'll break the flavour down and we'll describe it for you a little bit more in depth. So we'll go to the middle third of the palate first. Very good. Yeah, so the backbone of this beer, you can feel that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. That forms the backbone of your beer, and it just lingers there. It does give the beer a little touch of dryness into the aftertaste, but it is really nice. So moving further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness coming out of the beer there. Then there's a sort of smattering of Jacob's cream cracker, which I do really quite like. So yeah, lovely Jacob's cream crackery type layer out of this one. The next layer up is a little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character there, and you do get a little bit of graininess out of this beer into the aftertaste. I definitely say that. So yeah, a wee layer of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there. Then the next layer up is a more kind of fluffy, fresh white bready character. That's coming from the barley malt. But then yeah, on top of that, you get that more dense, wheaty, white bready character out of this one. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So you can feel that the wheat is a little bit smoother further forward, but it's definitely got a little bit more of a kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing. Or it's definitely got a bit more bitiness to it further back. And the wheat actually does build in this one. So I said earlier on I wasn't getting much wheat out of it, but yeah, the flavour does develop over time. That's one of the benefits of doing these kind of longer beer reviews for you actually. So yeah, lovely kind of wheaty bitiness there. in that more dense white bready layer on the middle third of your palate. On top of that, you've got the oaty side of the beer. So down the middle line of your palate, you've got that big oaty kind of creamy note out of this one. Then as you move further out toward the edges of your palate, you can feel there's just a little touch of dryness coming out from the oats there. But this beer is very, very fresh, you can tell. So the oaty creaminess is building quite a lot in this one. So yeah, I would say that in the dead centre of your palate with this one, you get that little circle there. You've got that little oily circle in there, which has a wee bit more of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note coming out of it. And that is the boozy part of the beer. And it's just surrounded by a little bit of McVitie's digestive, biscuity kind of character. And we find that quite often in these New England IPAs, especially the ones that are at the higher ABV. But this one, I would say, is really, really nice. Yeah, but it's not too sweet. As I say, the sweetness is there in the beginning, but then it kind of disappears a little bit. Another thing I would say is that further back on that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's an almost sort of Skittlesy type flavour coming out of this one, and that is due to the yeast. You find that in quite a few New England IPAs, and there's one specific brand of yeast, if we can call it, that does that, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need to, pardon me, about the middle third of your palate with this one. Let's go to the back third of your palate then, and the sort of yeasty characters. So as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread from the barley malt in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bread just sitting on top of that with a little bit of bitiness there and some of that Skittlesy flavour that I was talking about. But yeah, the back third of your palate, you've got the fresh white bready bread crust in there, the Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that. You've got the wholemeal brown bready layer sitting on top of that, which is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. You've got the fluffier white bready character from the barley malt just sitting on top of that. And then yeah, you've got the more dense wheaty note sitting on top of that. But yeah, it's a little bit more kind of bitey in a sense. But then you've got all the yeasty characters sitting on top of that as well. So yeah, let's focus on that yeasty side of things. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer, for me, at its core, it's, I'd say there's like a sort of sweet wholemeal brown bread at its core, then it's surrounded by like a slightly sweeter, almost like slightly buttery, fresh white bready character. Then around the very edge of it, it's got a little bit more of a crackery and bread crusty sort of thing. So yeah, the yeasty character that comes out of this one is just sitting there on the, it's just sitting there on top of everything else on that back third of your palate. But yeah, you can feel on the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the yeasty character in this one, it has got a little bit of a sweet bready note to it, but it also adds a little bit of dryness to the beer. So yeah, malty and yeasty wise, this beer is, again, very, very well done. So let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So green component first. One thing I will say that I'm noticing about this beer the more that I drink of it is that there is a little bit of bitterness kind of building up in this one. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. Then as you move further forward from that, the earthiness does come forward a wee bit and you start to get some woodiness in there, but you can feel there's a little touch of pine resin behind everything else, and as you reach the front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral, aromatic and kind of spicy in a way. So yeah, the way that goes together in this one I think is really nice. But round the front curve of your tongue, the beer is just that little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. So you've got a wee bit of grassy zestiness coming out of it, which I think is very, very nice too. But yeah, definitely a wee bit more bitterness in this one, the more that you drink of it. But let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. But when you take this beer in, it is so juicy, it's lovely. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread in the middle, then the more kind of dense wheaty white bread on top. The base of that front 30 pallets, the fresh white bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, the wholemeal brown bread's in there, the barley malt white bread, the wheaty character, then the smoother oaty notes. Then above that, you've got that lovely oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. So yeah, let's focus on that. Let's focus on that oily fruity character then. So yeah, I would say that at the back of that oily bubble that I was talking about, there is actually a little touch of grapefruit in this one, which Citra sometimes will, sometimes won't show you. But I'm definitely getting a little bit of grapefruit in this one. But on top, if you go a little bit further forward and go up to the top, I think there's a wee bit of peachy sharpness in there. But yeah, lovely little bit of peachy sharpness in there, big juicy mango, the softer passion fruit underneath. Then as you move further forward, I think there's a wee bit of, there's definitely a little bit of apricot and the kind of pineapple notes. I think the pineapple is mostly going to come from the racal in this one, but you know, racal can also give you that little bit of grapefruit in there as well. So I think it's the racal, you know, when you combine racal and Citra, they give you quite a complex and quite punchy tropical fruity note in my experience, and they're certainly doing that here. But yeah, as you move it into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about the Nelson Sauvignon. You've got that lovely white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of note coming out of it, and there's a wee bit of a more kind of light, there's a little touch of limey zestiness just behind the front tip of the tongue too. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think in this one is really quite nice. You do get a bit of that grapefruit, that sort of grapefruit pungency, and also the limey pungency lingering there into the aftertaste of the beer. But for the most part, your fruity characters, the soft gooseberry and the big tropical fruity notes. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer for me, if you know these hops, it's not doing anything surprising, but it's just so well done, and you can't ask for any more than that these days when you consider how many New England hazies are out there on the market. And yeah, it's definitely from memory. This is up there with one of my favourite New England hazies that I've had from Uchu. But then again, it's been a while since I've had one, but the quality of these has always been good. So maybe I'm just forgetting how good this brewery actually is, because they do rightly get a lot of plaudits. But yeah, beautiful beer this one. Conclusion is, try it if you see it. But yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel then. So yeah, for me, this beer, I would say this is kind of pushing, I'd say it's maybe mid-range full-bodied. The carbonation's very smooth in this one. It's got a lovely mix of oily slickness and creaminess to it, but it also has that typical Japanese cleanliness. As I've mentioned many a time, the water quality on Japan is great. You can really, it's a volcanic island, you can really taste that in their beers, but there's also this thing with the Japanese where they want beers to be drinkable. For them, craft beer, any kind of beer should be drinkable. So no matter what style you've got, you always have this element of what I call the Japanese cleanliness in the Japanese craft beers. You can definitely still get that even in a beer like this. But yeah, you've got the malty base in this one. You've got a lovely little bit of smoothness a little bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a kind of smooth, creamy sweetness on top. Lovely big juicy fruity notes, as we've talked about, mainly tropical, but a wee bit of citrusy character into the aftertaste. And when it comes to the IBU of this beer, I want to say this one's slightly more bitter, maybe 40 or 50 IBUs, something like that, but it really does smoothen out into the aftertaste, this one. But all in all, a beautiful beer, this one, and I'm really glad I got the chance to try this. My first IPA from Uchu in a good wee while. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been awesome to try. So yeah, this was the Break Edition 1, a 10% New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, quadruple dry hopped from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi, out to the west of Tokyo, over in Japan. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Uchu Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. Until the next time, check out my social media, check out Uchu Brewing social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very shortly. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and